talk, but they recently told me what's going on in the world. A non-church, no great controversy background person can tell there's something going on that's strange. World's no longer normal, if it ever has been normal. And we know that there's a clock ticking. There's a great controversy storm brewing on the horizon, already blowing a little bit, and eventually it'll burst loose, and we are at 11:55 p.m. of world history. If you take the statue from Daniel 2, we're in the toenails. And the toenails are growing long, but they will get clipped one day soon, the entire statue. A lot of quotes tonight. I will not always have this many quotes as tonight, but see, tonight you're already somewhat tired from traveling and you won't know what hit you until it's over. And I will not always use PowerPoint either. I have one tomorrow night. We're going to dig into the storms in the book of Revelation and the 7 churches. Sabbath morning, no PowerPoint. We're going to go through the book of Daniel and the storms in Daniel. Saturday night, we got 2 options. I'm still praying about it. I have a presentation on Martin Luther and 500 years of Reformation, and his conversion happened in a storm. We don't know all the details about that, but very interesting to me. It's a real storm story. I might do that. I might do storms in the Gospel of Mark. Still praying about those 2 options. And then Sunday morning, just like a pastor here, through prayer only got to be here. I didn't grow up Seventh-day Adventist. And through miracles and surviving some storms in my personal life, I'm going to share my testimony Sunday morning, how God brought me here. I should not be standing here, but here I am. But listen to this quote. It's from the book Education, page 179, 180. Angels are now restraining the winds of strife. Talk about storms. That they may not blow until the world shall be warned of its coming doom, but a storm is gathering, ready to burst upon the earth. And when God shall bid his angels loose the winds, there will be such a scene of strife as no pen can picture. I looked from my hotel room, 6th floor, out on 75, and I thought these hundreds and thousands of cars driving by, no clue what's about to happen on planet Earth. Who's going to tell them? Do you know who? It's going to have to be you and I, or the stones will cry out. Okay? We got to witness, aggressively witness, everywhere we can go. Something also fascinating to me, Ellen White's first vision. Do you know how old she was? 17. That was December of 1844. First vision. What she saw was the Advent people. Those were Millerites, Deists, Baptists, Congregationalists, etc. Seventh-day Adventists didn't exist yet. That wasn't officially till 1863. They are marching towards the second coming in the New Jerusalem. What's fascinating and sad is these are people who got the message. They are focused on the second coming. It's not some of them are wicked and out in the world and they haven't got the message yet. No, all of these headed the right direction. And do you know what she saw? There were some of them, I won't point that out to you too fast. Right here. Do you see what's happening to some of them? They are falling off the path before the second coming. Now, can you imagine? You're not still in the world. You had a conversion experience. You're headed the right direction. You're focusing on the second coming. Can you imagine 5 minutes before the second coming of Jesus Christ, you're dropping off the path and don't make it in the end? That was the first vision she received. That made happens to me, when the lights go out a little bit and the road gets narrow and the storm is blowing in your life, do not give up. Because any time you give up too soon. Life is a lot of details. Walmart this, and H-E-B and Albertsons, and the children, and the mortgage payment, and the relationships. It's all secondary. Your number one thing in life, here on earth, I'm telling you right now, is hanging on until the second coming of Jesus Christ. Because if you miss that event, nothing else will matter. God make it all the way to the second coming, Matthew 24:13. He who perseveres till the end. So I developed this sermon called Red Light, Green Light. I think there's a kids program, but kids, you're welcome to stay. And if you stay, you tell me how many times tonight I'm saying red light and green light. Okay? Starting now. Red light, green light. That's 1-1. All right? Anytime I say red light, green light, that's 2. Okay? There's going to be many. Okay? There's paper, pencil. Keep track of how many times. After the sermon, tell me how many times. Red light, green light. We have those all over the world. Red light means stop. Green light means go. Right? Very basic principle in traffic. Now, what I discovered is, when I opened my Bible, I just finished 3-4 days ago reading through the entire Bible, the last 9 months. Like a pregnancy. 9 months. I did 9 months. That was a fairly fast reading. And in Exodus, I discovered there are red lights and green lights. Trying to summarize an entire Bible book into 2 words. Exodus would be red light, green light. We're going to run through the book of Exodus and notice every red light and green light. I think we're on number 5 or 6 now, children, right? 7? You're counting too. You see that? They had to go to Egypt. Stay there 400 years. One of my favorite Bible verses is Exodus 2, verse 23 to 25. You ever face a hard time, you must have Exodus chapter 2, verse 23 to 25 in your biblical repertoire. The Bible I read cover to cover is this one right here. The second time I've done it with this particular Bible. Notes included. Was a tremendous experience. There were many times I wanted to stop and study a paragraph more in depth, but I wanted to read it Genesis to Revelation for a big overview again. And in Exodus, they're leaving Egypt, and they get to Mount Sinai. I know among archaeologists there's a debate, where is Mount Sinai? Is it in Egypt? Is it in Saudi Arabia? I'm going to leave that alone for now. And then eventually, 40 years later, they get to the Promised Land. I've driven this route right here in a bus. Do you know how long that takes? Not very long. If you walk it about 2 weeks, it's not as far as it looks. Could be done in 2 weeks. How long did it take them? 40 years, because there were many self-inflicted red lights along the way. 40 years instead of 2 weeks. We're going to take a look at this journey. Before we get to Exodus, a little context. You tell me, is this red light or is this green light? Let me read the text to you. Genesis 32 verse 9. The Lord who said to me, go back to your land and to your family, and I will cause you to prosper. Would you call that a red light or a green light?
Green light.
That's a green light from the Lord. He's saying, green light, I want you to go back home to where you belong. Green light. Then comes Genesis 32:26. Now I've heard that we need to wrestle with the Lord like Jacob did. We do. But we need to keep in mind he had to do that out of stubbornness. And we don't want to be stubborn. But Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him on the brook Jabbok. I've stood where it might have taken place in 2012 until daybreak. And Jacob says, let me go, for it is, this is the angel of the Lord, let me go, for it is daybreak. And then Jacob responds, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Now, trick question, is that a red light or a green light? There's a red light. Okay, they're stuck on the bridge, and Jacob is saying, unless you bless me, give me a green light, I'm not going to let you go. You know that story. Just a little insight here from Great Controversy 6:18. Their faith does not fail because their prayers are not immediately answered. Though suffering the keenest anxiety, terror, and distress, the storms of life, they do not cease their intercessions. They lay hold of the strength of God as Jacob laid hold of the angel, and the language of their souls is, I will not let thee go except thou bless me. Joseph then, this is the end of the book of Genesis. Joseph died at the age of 110. They embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. This is the final verse in Genesis. How does Genesis start? Creation of the world, creation of people, creation of the people of God. And the book ends on a funeral. A red light. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the book. Funeral, coffin, death. That's it. Is that a red light or is that a green light? Well, that's lights out. That's a red light. Book of Genesis literally starts out green with creation, explosion, and creative power of God, and at the very end, death. And that's it. Why? Let me show you something. Red light in the evening with God can turn into a green light in the morning. Do not quit during a red light phase in your life. Even though the book of Genesis ends on a red light, coffin, funeral, that's it. After every red light comes a green light. Every time. Let me show you. Hebrews 11:22. By faith, Joseph, that's the Joseph from Egypt and Genesis. Watch what happens. As he was nearing, I'm going to translate this from Hebrew, as he was nearing the permanent red light in his life. Done. Dead. Death certificate. Mentioned the exodus of the sons of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. What were those instructions concerning his bones? Don't leave them in Egypt. Don't leave me stuck in a red light because I believe in a green light. That's faith. And he made it with that red light, green light faith all the way back into the promised land, even though his bones are dead. Now, what's going to happen to Joseph in the resurrection? Green light. Green light. Never let red light discourage you for eternity. Because after every red light comes a green light. Now, you can turn that around. When things are going well, watch out. Because after every green light comes a red light. But the good news is, after every red light comes a green light. And since we know the Bible a little bit, the final say by God, we already know. It's going to be green light, not red light. All right. We're going to go into Exodus chapter 2, verse 23 to 25. I don't think I put that on this. I did. Sometimes I don't put Bible verses on the screen. That way you look it up in your Bible. But let's read this. Love this. That ought to be laminated and on your refrigerator. Better yet, laminated, put it in your heart. Amen. Next time you have a hard time. It came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. You ever been there in life? Mm-hmm. The groan of life, troubles, and pain. And they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And now listen to this. And God heard their groaning. I love astronomy, and I like Orion and all that, and I have an app on my phone. I can hold it up against the night sky, and it tells me what I'm looking at. It's fascinating to me. And Jesus will come back from the gates of Orion like this. How far is God away from you if he hears your groaning? That means he's pretty close when you think he's far away. Right? Just keep that in mind. God is much closer when you think he's much farther away. He's so close, he can hear the suffering of your life. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, with Jacob, and God looked upon the children of Israel. And King James says God had respect unto them. The Hebrew word, you remember Hebrew? Dr. Willis? Yada. It's a very common elementary Hebrew verb. That's 10 years ago. Yada. It literally says, and God knew. Isn't that? He hasn't solved the problem yet, but he listens, he sees, and he knows what you're going through, and that you're in a red light phase in life right now. He knows. And when God listens, and when he sees, and when he knows, guess what's coming next? Eventually, he'll turn the light green on you. In his timing. He knows better than you and I. God knows. We're going to jump to Exodus chapter 13:21. The Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to lead them. So God listens, he hears, he sees, he knows, and then he walks with us. In a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way during the day, and in a pillar of fire to give them light at night so that they could travel day or night. Is that a red light or a green light? Well, the flame might have a little red in that, but the presence of God walking with you out of Egypt, that is a green light. Amen. After every red light in life comes a green light you can count on. Amen. Exodus 14 verse 4. From the perspective of God, life looks a little different. That might be one where I did not put the text up there. I'll read it to you. Exodus chapter 14, verse 4. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. By the way, my accent, I was born, raised, and kids, listen, spanked. Not as much as my older brother, but born, raised, spanked in Germany. I finally figured out how to get rid of my accent. I've been in the United States for almost 30 years, and I learned how I can lose my accent. Go back to Germany. I tried, and it's stuck now. It's too late now. Exodus 14 verse 4, I will harden Pharaoh's heart that he shall follow after them. I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians, now listen to this, you can't miss this. I highlighted this 8 months ago. And the Egyptians may know that I'm the Lord, and they did so. You know what this means? So you got Israel, you got to picture this. You got Israel finally leaving Egypt after 400 years of red light. God turns the light green. He works on a different timetable than we do. We get frustrated at the drive-thru when it takes 5 minutes for Taco Bell to deliver the bean burrito. And we're wondering, what did the person in front of us order? We need patience. The huge red light for 400 years. God finally turns it green. You know what happens next? Pharaoh persecutes them, and the light turns red when we thought it's going to be green from this day forward. What did verse 4 say? Is it too loud, or is it pretty good sound?
Yeah.
What did verse 4 say? The Egyptians, not the Seventh-day Adventists, the Egyptians will know that I'm the Lord. Let me tell you a secret. And it'll be more than once. Your red light might be somebody else's green light opportunity. The red light for the Israelites meant a green light to the Lord for the Egyptians that didn't know the Lord. Red lights in your life might be a green light opportunity for an unbeliever. I learned this the hard way, and I'm still working on it. I'm over halfway through life, I think. I don't know if I'll get as old as Joseph. But instead of complaining and whining and why me, and what did I do? And many times red lights are my own ignorance and, my own doing. You know what I'm saying? I create my own red lights. But my red lights are somebody else's green light opportunity. So I'm trying to learn not to complain, but to see somebody else's green light. Let's move on. Exodus 14, verse 10. The Pharaoh approached. Israelites looked up and saw the Egyptians coming after them. Then the Israelites were terrified and cried out to the Lord for help. What do they do during red light? Same thing we do. Cry out, complain, panic, and forget that in the past, God's got the control of the green light in our lives. They forgot. They cry out. No faith, just panic. There they are. They finally got out of Egypt, and there's red light after red light after red light. I read through Exodus, and I saw red light, green light, red light, green light. Can you keep up with my red light and green light? Why is that? We're going to get to that. Very, very specific answer to that. They make it out of Egypt. Huge green light. Finally, Passover. And let's go. And Pharaoh behind it. And what do they encounter? Red light after red light after red light. And there's a reason for that, as we will discover. Exodus 14, verse 13. Moses said to the people, good for Moses, don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation He will provide for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again.
Amen.
This is great controversy in a nutshell. This is already telling us 3,500 years ago that one day the lights will turn out on evil, and there will only be green light from this day forward.
Amen.
And there's already a hint that God gonna write the final chapter. Nobody else. Okay? He's in charge. Exodus 14:31, when Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and believed in Him and in His servant Moses. Do you see the result of red lights? Red lights can increase our faith if we allow the Lord. But so many times we just exit. Red light, up there. Exit, exit, exit. Red light. We don't think God still cares. Midnight cry, morning song. And then comes Exodus 15, I will sing unto the Lord. Red lights, solved by God, increase our music capacity in praise. They made the song more meaningful. It's like you've been sick and you're not sick anymore. That feels better than before you got sick. You're not just healthy, you're also not sick anymore. So you can sing better. Powerful quote here, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 290. The great lesson here taught is for all time. Often. How many times? Often. Ouch. Yeah. I fool myself into thinking that once I manage to make it through this last crisis, then I'll be good until death or the second coming. Yeah. Often. Right. Many times, the Christian life is beset by dangers and duty seems hard to perform. The imagination pictures impending ruin before and bondage for death behind. You let your mind sometimes go into the negative and the dark, and it's not going to work out, and there's no way out of this. Yet the voice of God speaks clearly. Go forward. We should obey this command, even though our eyes cannot penetrate the darkness and we feel cold waves about our feet. Do not give up when life turns red. The obstacles that hinder our progress will never disappear before a halting, doubting spirit. Those who defer obedience till every shadow of uncertainty disappears and there remains no risk of failure or defeat will never obey at all. Unbelief whispers, let us wait till the obstructions are removed and we can see our way clearly. But faith courageously urges an advance. You move on when you can't see the green light around the corner. Do not give up during red lights. Then comes Exodus 15. They just had this tremendous victory. Their enemy is done. Great controversy is over. The Egyptians are taken care of. Praise God. Green light from this day forward. Now listen to this. Tremendous victory. They journeyed for 3 days in the wilderness without finding water. Let me ask you a Wikipedia question. How many days can you go without water? Plus minus? 3 days. You know what God is doing? He takes them to the brink of death. He turns the green light. Huge green light. Pharaoh is taken care of. They think they got it made now. And he turns the light red. Why? We cannot autopilot in the Christian life, coasting into the kingdom. We have to continually trust all the way to the second coming. No water, 3 days. They're not thirsty. They're about to die. The tongue is sticking to the roof. If we don't get something to drink now, we might not see tomorrow. That's the scenario. Okay. Serious situation. They get to water, and I wouldn't call it a sense of humor. That would be inappropriate and too cheap. A learning opportunity. God says, you're thirsty? I know that. Let me get you some water. The water is bitter. Is this a sarcastic, mean God? No. He's developing the faith that they will need to conquer the promised land. He's not killing them. He's not taking them out. He's developing their strength right at the moment when we think he has forsaken us. So the next time God takes you to the edge and you don't know where your next water is coming from, trust him. You trust him all the way till the second coming. Exodus 16 verse 3 gets so bad that they complain and say, if only we had died or gotten back to Egypt. That's where they're at in the middle of the journey. We'd like to go back to Egypt. No. Exodus 16 is only halfway through. So, here's my line again for you. You might want to write that down, at least in your heart. Whenever you give up too soon. Until the second coming, there's no giving up. You hang in there, in faith, dead or alive. Sometimes life looks like this, and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but by definition, there is a light at the end of every tunnel.
Amen.
I don't know how long your tunnel is. In Switzerland, France, Italy, they opened up a St. Gotthard section. I think it's 36 miles of that. But guess what? You keep driving and you see light. Right? Keep going. Life sometimes takes you into a tunnel, and if you don't give up, at some point, you get to the other side. Now, let me tell you a secret. God, the God we believe in, is not a God who says, I'm going to send you into a dark spot, dark time, tunnel, 36 miles. I'll wait on the other side. Good luck. Hope you make it. Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
I will fear no evil.
I will fear no evil. Why not?
Because thou art with me.
He is walking with us through the tunnel, not just waiting on the other side.
Amen.
Exodus 16 verse, I didn't write down the verses. The first thing didn't work out. God says, let me test you from a different angle. We got water? Let me take your food away. Let's see how you handle this red light. They complain. Manna comes down. I'll tell you a secret. I'm not too worried about the dinosaurs. I'm not even wondering about some bad experiences, red lights in my life. Why did this happen? Why did God allow this? What I would like to do in heaven is not ask why and were there dinosaurs or any of that. I would like to taste manna. I want to see what that tastes like. Exodus 17, no water. Does that sound familiar? If we don't learn a faith lesson in a red light time, God has to repeat that lesson until we get it. Repetition. Okay, they didn't get it the first time. Let's do it the second time. Jesus did the same with the feeding of the 5,000. They didn't get it immediately. He repeated the red light lesson. Then comes Exodus 17 verse 8. Water. Green light. After every red light comes a green light. We're marching on through the book of Exodus. And every single day they could see that red light. I don't know what color the presence of the Lord is good news. He's present in their midst. This is Exodus chapter 25 verse 8. Let them build me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. What we lost in the Garden of Eden, the presence of the Lord, God says, let me join you again. I'm here, okay? Even when the lights turn red. Now, why does God do that? Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, red light, red light. That was 3 in a row, kids. 3 times. Said, check out my next picture. Have you ever felt that your life is like this? So do we go or do we not go? And then it says go, and as we are in the middle of the intersection, the light turns red. Why? There's an answer in the book of Exodus. And I already mentioned it, but repetition makes things stick better. Watch this, okay? You might have been traveling all day, but don't miss this. Why does life turn out this way sometimes? And I've had moments like this. Exodus chapter 18, verse 1, Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about everything that God had done for Moses. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a time in your family circle and extended family where the people around you hear what God has done in your life? Or do you keep that a secret? An outsider, but part of the family, okay? Not always with Moses, but he comes to visit. Here's what God has done. Share your testimony. I have a church member, we send out thousands of Bible study cards, and they come back to our church, the Seminars Unlimited, and I hand them to church members, and they say, that's not my gift. You don't have to explain the relationship of the anti-typical Day of Atonement in correlation to the close of probation of Revelation 22:11 in conjunction with 1844. But I cannot share your testimony. Only you can share your testimony to Jethro. Can't do it for you. I can learn Greek and Hebrew, and it's your testimony, what God has done in your life. Share it. Tell somebody. Okay? So Moses tells somebody what God has done, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. I'm noticing a gospel theme in the book of Exodus. It is never the strength of the Israelites, the wisdom of the Israelites. They got their act together. They figured things out. No, it's the Lord doing it.
Amen.
It's God doing something they can't do for themselves. Moses recounted to his father, count your blessings, name them one by one. Yeah, that's what he's doing. Father, all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships, red lights. Hey, Moses pulls out the Facebook and shows Jethro the red lights on the way out of Egypt. Now watch what happens. They confronted them on the way and how the Lord delivered them. And Jethro acknowledges God because of that. Now I know, because of Moses' red light testimony, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. Here again, somebody's red light is somebody else's green light. Now, listen to this. I'm going to put my remote away. When you falter, you give up on your faith in a red light moment in your life, you're not only cheating yourself out of a tighter relationship with God, it affects negatively people around you. The way you deal with red lights is not just about you. Life, hey kids, write this down. Life's not about you. Life is about you, how you relate to God, and that can eternally affect the people around you. Moses' red light was Jethro's green light. So, next time you face a red light in your life, pause, take a deep breath, and ask God not just to make it through and help me through this and help me. Ask God, how can this red light in your life be somebody else's green light around you? It will totally change how you deal with difficult situations. I'm not asking for another red light, but dare I say, red light is somebody else's blessing. Here's from 1903, April 7, Review and Herald. The Lord led his people to Rephidim, and he may choose to lead us there also to test our loyalty. So the story of Exodus is our story. He does not always bring us into green light places. If he did, in our self-sufficiency, we should forget that he's our helper. He longs to manifest himself to us and to reveal the abundant supplies at our disposal when the light's red. And he permits trial and disappointment to come to us that we may realize our helplessness and learn to call upon him for aid. That means red light sometimes can mean that we've drifted from the Lord, and he's trying to bring us back. He can cause cooling streams to flow from the flinty rock. We shall never know until we are face to face with God, when we shall see as we are seen, know as we are known, how many burdens he has borne for us, and how many burdens he would have been glad to bear, if with childlike faith. Okay, children, you're ahead of us adults. Childlike faith, we had brought them to him. How hard is that? Why don't we do that? Why don't we fall into whining and complaining? I had a student come to my office and say, Pastor Sorke, can I share some wine and cheese with you? Whining. You know, he knew he was just going to complain about it. And it wasn't this 4.0 student. Yeah, we think misery is misery. Red lights can turn into a mission. Can you imagine your spiritual status if things just went well? Yeah, mercy. Red lights, green light in the morning. This is not unique to the Exodus. I think this runs through the entire Bible, this red light, green light principle. I ought to read it again and mark it red and green. Hey, I didn't say red light, green light, but I did right now. When are things turning green in the Bible, and when are they turning red? That would be interesting. Color-coded and see how that turns out. Adam experienced that. I mean, he caused the ultimate red light for us. You notice, ladies, theologically, okay, Eve took the fruit first, but do you know who gets blamed in the theology of the Apostle Paul for all this? Adam, not Eve. Adam, huge red light, and God said, let me cover you. Green light. Noah experienced that. Huge red light, but there was a green light invitation. Okay? Green light was available to humanity. Not very many people took it, unfortunately, but it was there. I do not endorse violence, but just for the children here, sometimes red lights are bigger than we are, but in the strength of the Lord, we can knock out red lights.
Amen.
Right? Our problems might be big, but God is always bigger.
Amen.
Always. Then we have the book of Job. I find it interesting. Students tell me sometimes this makes no sense. Commentaries try to make sense out of Job. I think one of the messages of Job is that it does not make sense. Sin does not make sense. Suffering does not always make sense, does not always have a rational explanation. Life does not always make sense. I can't figure out everything that has happened. And I think that's one of the points of that story, where we don't have to understand it. That's exactly the point. But guess what? Then comes chapter 41 and 42, and in the end of the book of Job, God turns the light green.
Amen.
That's a life promise. There are 40 chapters of red light. Why? The friends speculate Job is trying to figure things out, but there's chapter 41 and 42, and we need to hang on until we get to chapter 41 and 42. Do not quit in chapter 39, because we know there's a chapter 41, 42 with a green light. Elijah, God said, you know what, Elijah? Now, that's the ultimate privilege in life, I think. No funeral, they're expensive. No funeral, you're too far away. Elijah, come on up. I'll send you a taxi. Yeah. Green light, come on up. He didn't have to taste death. Well, then we got the three friends who were willing to taste death, but they experienced the presence of the Son of God in the midst of literally red light. 7 times hotter than normal. But that's not the point of the story. Ultimately, who gets to see Jesus in the furnace? A pagan Babylonian king. And are you seeing the trend now? Somebody else's red light is somebody else's green light. Nebuchadnezzar would not have witnessed the presence of Jesus Christ in the fiery furnace if they had not held on to their faith in the ultimate red light moment of their lives. And this is not Daniel. See, not everybody can be a Mark Finley and a Doug Batchelor and a Daniel. That's just his little friend. But they are faithful, and their faithfulness was a blessing to someone else. Those who walk in the path of obedience will encounter just a few hindrances. You still with me? Many, often many, okay? Strong, subtle influences may bind them to the world, but the Lord is able to render futile every agency that works for the defeat of his chosen ones in his strength. Not in mine, his. They may overcome every temptation. I highlighted that for you. Conquer every difficulty. And I paid $300 to highlight that. You know why? Because I have a pen stuck to my computer. That's not my computer. It belongs to the school. But I've lost that pen twice. And every time I bought a new one, they're $99. So that is a $300 highlight just for you. I'm on pen number 3. I can't buy any more pens. That's a sign of the time. We used to work with this. Now our pens are $99. There's something wrong with that. Ezekiel chapter 1. I was among the captives by the river Chebar in Babylon, that the heavens were opened and I saw the visions of God. Did you catch that? I was tied up as a prisoner in a red light phase in my life, and during a red light, I saw the heavens open. We're cast down, and our face drops when we should be looking up, and God might open the heavens for us when we think it's red light. John, book of Revelation. I can imagine that John thought his ministry is over. The light has turned red permanently until death. He's banned to an island. I just read it in the commentary that he had to work in the mines that cannot be pleasant in old age. And he's banned, and ministry and church and fellowship and camp meeting, all that gone. It's over. Guess what? Worst red light possible turned into a green light. Next time, red light in your life, pay attention to what God is about to do. Right? Do not despair. Peter. Now we read the story fast. Jesus comes, he pulls him out. Okay, next story. No, slow down. Desire of Ages, page 83. It would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in the contemplation of the life of Christ and let the imagination grasp each seed. So grasp this seed. What's about to happen to Peter? Death by drowning. Can you imagine 2 minutes with oxygen deprivation before you pass out? You know you're drowning, you're suffocating, and what's going on in your mind. That's Peter right there. And he's almost dead, and Jesus comes and grasps him and pulls him back out. Green light. Red light. Green light. Here's another one. 1 Peter 1, 6-7. See, he's got the rights to write this. He turned the light on Jesus red 3 times in a row. And now he's writing this. In this you greatly rejoice, though now, for a little while, one lifetime. What's one lifetime compared to eternity? If need be, you have been grieved by various trials, red lights, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. How you handle red lights got to be revealed at the second coming of Jesus Christ. For a little while. Trials, testing. Well, what Peter is saying is, are you made out of gold or are you made out of plastic? That's what we're waiting for. Everything else is just details and secondary. Then we got Paul. He was on the wrong track. God turned the light red, which turned out to be a green light for Paul. Conversion, ministry to the Gentiles, of course. 2 Corinthians 1, 8 through 9. We think that I fooled myself into this many times as a Christian. I thought if I'm faithful, I go to church, I read my Bible a little, I pray, I tithe, it'll be green light. And I do this, the light will turn green. Not so. Listen to this. We do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened beyond measure. You ever experienced that? Above strength, so that we despaired even of life. That's life with Jesus, right there. Yes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. Do not turn your Christianity on autopilot. Every day is surrender. We die daily, and we have to trust God daily. 2 Corinthians 12:9. In one verse, I think he's got life's wisdom encapsulated. One verse. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. When I'm weak, he is strong. I think it takes about, conservative estimates, 80, 90 years to figure out that one. I think when I'm strong, I'm strong. If I only was stronger, if I only preached better, if I only was like this evangelist, if I was strong, I would be strong. And no, it doesn't work that way. When I'm weak, when I got a red light ripping off my shirt, he is strong.
Amen.
Takes a lifetime to learn. James 1, 2 through 4. Quick check. You're hanging in there? I only got you now one weekend. We're getting close. I don't have my landing gear down yet, but we're way over halfway. We're getting it. I'll gauge you, and we'll land it soon. James 1, 2 through 4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking nothing. I'm not going to get into the perfection discussion here, but if you want this part in your life, hang on. Okay? Red lights. The road to perfection is plastered by red light. Revelation 5, I wept and wept. There was no solution inside except Jesus Christ, but eventually they sing a new song. I'm going to move along here. Matthew 24:13, he who endures till the end will be saved. What's the context of this? AD 70, destruction of Jerusalem. Now in Matthew 24, what makes end time events complicated at times is Jesus puts two projectors on the stand at the same time. AD 70, that's Anno Domini 70, not 8070, as one student wrote on the test. AD 70, must be my accent. AD 70 is the destruction of Jerusalem, which is a miniature display of what will happen to the world in the end. Terrible time. And Jesus says, hang in there till the end. Now, what is fascinating to me, the Savior's prophecy concerning the visitation of judgments upon Jerusalem is to have another fulfillment, of which that terrible desolation was but a faint shadow. Have mercy. I don't think we or the world realize the red light that's coming at some point. In the fate of the chosen city, we may behold the doom of a world that has rejected God's mercy, but in that day, as in the days of time of Jerusalem's destruction, God's people will be delivered.
Amen.
And I won't read the whole quote. People were warned. They fled to Pella. And then how many Christians died in AD 70? Estimate 10,000? 144,000? Zero. They took the warning, green light, get out of town, and made it. I need to introduce to you the ultimate red light. The way that worked is, I don't want to sound trite, but my favorite scene, Gethsemane. Jesus does not look into a red light, he looks into a no light. And he almost quit, and he almost walked down on it. That's the Son of God. He wrestled with the Father for 1 hour, and it looks to me like that when you are in utter despair, Matthew 26:36-46 says, to the point of death, that when you find your Father, you can face your future. He walked into the garden, total darkness, faltered, looked at the situation, surrendered, prayed for an hour, not my will, your will be done. And by verse 46, he says, let's rise, and my betrayer is at hand. Let's do this. The ultimate red light. And my God, why have you forsaken me? Now take a look at this red light. We got to look at this under the microscope. At the very moment where he thinks he is God forsaken, which you will or have thought at some point in your life, he claims God twice.
Amen.
When you think God is absent, claim his presence nonetheless. Darkest moment of your life, still cry out to God. And never quit during a question mark. See, he's asking a question. Did he get an answer out of heaven? No. God was silent at the cross. No voice out of heaven. God only spoke twice, the Father, 3 times. Baptism, transfiguration, and John 12 when the Greeks came to see Jesus. At the cross, the Father was silent. And still, Jesus didn't give up. Don't quit during the question mark, because every red light eventually turns into a green light. But without the crown of thorns, no golden crown. They go together. Often, there's that word again, when placed in a trying situation, we doubt that the Spirit of God has been leading us, but it was the Spirit's leading that brought Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. When God brings us into trial, he has a purpose to accomplish for our good. Here's another one, Ministry of Healing 471. The fact that we are called upon to endure trial shows that the Lord Jesus sees it as something precious, which he desires to develop. Now, kids, we take pictures now, right, like this. Long before computers, cell phones, SD cards, etc., we had to develop pictures in dark rooms. Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
Oh, you just confessed. No. You know what God is trying to do in dark times in your life? He's trying to develop his image in you. And that requires a dark room. Makes the light brighter. He does not cast worthless stones into his furnace. It is valuable ore that he refines. Are you going through this right now? Yeah, we all are. Painful process, but worth it in eternity. Don't give up. This is what God is trying to do with you. He has to turn on the heat so he can bend you without breaking you and fashion you into a tool. He's not punishing you. He's developing you. Here's Ministry of Healing 471 again. The blacksmith puts the iron and steel into the fire that he may know what manner of metal they are. The Lord allows his chosen ones to be placed into the furnace of affliction to prove what temper they are of and whether they can be fashioned for his work, making you a tool, not discarding you. And it takes an enormous amount of heat to bend this stubborn metal that I'm made out of. Can't bend cold metal. Much harder. God has always tried his people in the furnace of affliction. It is in the heat of the furnace that the dross is separated from the true gold of the Christian character. Jesus watches the test. He knows what is needed to purify the precious metal, that it may reflect the radiance of his love. It is by close testing trials that God disciplines his servant. And you know the story. When does the metalsmith know that the metal is ready? When he can see his reflection in the silver. And all that gook, sin gook, has to rise to the top. God scoops it off, and then he's got a shining reflection of himself in you. Patriarchs and Prophets 129. The very trials that task our faith most severely make it seem that God has forsaken us, and to lead us closer to Christ, that we may lay all our burdens at his feet and experience the peace which he will give us in exchange. The trials of life, that's Mount of Blessing. I try to read some pages every day. Spirit of Prophecy. You must read Mount of Blessing. It's only 150 pages or so, a little thin book. And we just read it for prayer meeting as a church, 2-3 pages at a time. But you know what happens when you read 2 or 3 pages at a time? Eventually you finish the book. Best life advice ever. Here's a free sample. Trials of Life of God's Workmen, to remove the impurities, roughness from our character, their hewing, squaring, chiseling, their burnishing, polishing is a painful process. It is hard to be pressed down to the grinding wheel, but the stone is brought forth, prepared to fill its place in the heavenly temple. Upon no useless material does the master bestow such careful, thorough work. Only his precious stones are polished after the similitude of a palace. I was in 10th grade in Germany, wanted to become a pharmacist. Loved pharmaceutical stuff. I went to a pharmacy school. They were recruiting. They took a charcoal tablet, put it into a 10-ton press, pushed the button, and out came the pre-shape of an industrial diamond, and you could look through the charcoal tablet. But the only way that worked was by pressure. God puts you under 10 tons of pressure. He's trying to squeeze the charcoal in you so tight that you can look through it. And you become a diamond. Painful process, but this is what God is trying to do in your sanctification factory. That's where you're at. We'll keep moving along. God permits trials to assail his people, that by their constancy and obedience they themselves may be spiritually enriched, that their example may be a source of strength to others. Here again, your red light, somebody else's green light. In his providence, God brings them into positions that test their character, reveal defects and weaknesses that have been hidden from their knowledge. He gives them opportunity to correct these defects, to fit themselves for his service. He shows them their own weaknesses, teaches them to lean upon him, for he's their only help and safeguard. Run to God. This is the object to be attained. They are educated, trained, disciplined, prepared to fulfill the grand purpose for which their powers were given them. You're here for a reason. Don't miss it. Early writing 72, the very time to exercise faith is when we feel destitute of the Spirit, when thick clouds of darkness. Our theme for the weekend is a shelter in the time of storm. When thick clouds of darkness seem to hover over the mind, then is the time to let living faith pierce the darkness and scatter the clouds. Faith is a decision exercised when you don't feel like faith. Don't go with the feeling, go with the fact of faith. God has a song to teach us, and when we have learned it amid the shadows of affliction, we can sing it ever afterward. Revelation 15:3. I've noticed something in the book of Revelation. There's one complaint that I can tell from the saints. Justifiably so, Revelation 6:9, souls on the altar, they're asking God, not accusing, they're just asking how much longer. The blood of the martyrs. But beyond that, I'm noticing in all the songs, there's not one, why me? Why did this happen? There's no more complaining. When it's all said and done, the only thing left is praise. So we got to make it to that phase in eternity. Does life seem complicated to you? Here's Ezekiel. Chapter 1, verse 16, Ezekiel sees a wheel in the middle of a wheel. And life gets so complex, and relationships, and the kids, and spouse, and money, and this and that. I talked to my mom in Germany today, and she, quote, told me today, I don't even know where upside down is anymore. My dad had a stroke, trying to figure out what we do next, what do we do with the house, the car, he shouldn't be driving anymore, etc., etc. At some point, kids become parents. And my mom told me today, I don't even know upside down anymore. When that happens, Prophets and Kings 5:36, as the wheel-like complications were under the guidance of the hand beneath the wings of the cherubim, so the complicated play of human events is under divine control.
Amen.
At some point, okay, no politics, but at some point, neither Trump nor Putin nor what happened with Russia really matters. All in the hands of God, including your life. Acts of the Apostles 5:76, in all ages Satan has persecuted the people of God. He has tortured them, he's put them to death, but in dying they became conquerors. They bore witness to the power of one mightier than Satan. Wicked men may torture and kill the body, but they cannot touch the life that is hid with Christ in God. That's the shelter in the time of storm. They can incarcerate men and women in prison walls, but they cannot bind the spirit. That's shelter, not in the place of, but in the storm. God provides shelter. It is the work of faith to rest in God in the darkest hour, to feel, however sorely tried and tempest-tossed, that our Father is at the helm of the ship. And I wrote this for you just this afternoon with my $99 pen. The storm might not be canceled. Jesus does not always speak, peace, be still. But in the midst of the storm is an oasis of peace and security. Through trial and persecution, the glory and the character of God is revealed in his chosen ones, the believers in Christ, hated and persecuted by the world, are educated, disciplined in the school of Christ. On earth they walk in a narrow path, but they're purified in the furnace of affliction. They follow Christ through sore conflicts. They endure self-denial and experience bitter disappointments. You experienced bitter disappointments in life? But thus they learn the guilt and woe of sin. They look upon it with abhorrence, being partakers of Christ's sufferings, they can look beyond the gloom to the glory, saying, I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Through conflict, the spiritual life is strengthened. Trials, well borne, will develop steadfastness of character and precious spiritual graces, the perfect fruit. There's a harvest at the end. And love often matures best amid storm clouds, theme for this weekend, and darkness. Christ's doctrine lesson, page 60. From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. Do you notice that 666 is a bad number? It's about halfway in Jesus' ministry, and it announces there's death involved. You have to eat my body, my bread, and drink my blood. The Christian life involves death. And some disciples said, no more. Can you imagine you're following Christ and you get to the moment where you say, no. And you exit before the story is over. I pray you hang in there all the way until the end, and I'm approaching the end here. I was in the Middle East in 2012, and I noticed Matthew 25, sheep separated from the goats. Now they're still together, but still separate, and they're following a modern shepherd. Now he doesn't look like a nice shepherd, but he's a shepherd, and they follow wherever he's going. That's a lesson from the storm. Through the valley of the shadow of death. Red light one day, green light the next. Now I'm debating something. How are you doing? I got a couple of stories of storms in my personal life I can do now or save for Saturday night. Saturday night, we'll save them. Because I can read quote after quote after quote to you, Bible stories and how green lights and red lights and all that. But I'm going to share with you Saturday night some red lights. And some God solved, some he hasn't yet, but that's up to him. Right? He knows better. I'll save him for Saturday night. It involves my red Honda Civic. But